All right, we're live.
Okay. The meeting will now come to order. Welcome to the June 28th, 2021 City of Asheville Board of Adjustments meeting. My name is Pratik Bapta and I'm chair of the board. The Board of Adjustments is a quasi-judicial body that is governed by the North Carolina General Statutes and the city's Unified Development Ordinance. We are authorized to hear requests for variances from the city's Unified Development Ordinance, appeals from final determinations made by city officials charged with enforcement of the city's Unified Development Ordinance, requests for reasonable accommodations, and other requests as may be provided in the city's ordinances. All committee members and staff are participating virtually. We appreciate your patience as we work through committee meetings a bit differently. We are streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city's website and also linked on the Board of Adjustments page. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone. Dial 855-925-2801, and when prompted, enter code 9255. Again, I'll restate this for anyone listening. The public may participate by dialing 855-925-2801, and when prompted, enter code 9255. The automated system will ask you to press *3 to be heard. For those of you out there with us today, welcome. I will now go through and introduce all the committee members who are participating virtually. Please make sure to mute your microphone if you're not speaking. When you have a question or would like to unmute your microphone, please remember to mute your phone after you are done speaking. Committee members, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. John Michael Cletus.
Hello.
Suzanne Godsey. Bill Newman.
Hey.
Paul Wazinski.
Hi.
Also with us today is our Assistant City Attorney, Eric Edgerton, and alternate board member, David Angelis, who will be in attendance as a backup in case any of our currently seated board members have any technical difficulties. I'd also ask that anyone speaking today, including staff, to state their names and titles for the record before speaking. Okay, to our agenda. To help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud and do a vocal roll call for each vote. Additionally, I ask that committee members raise their hand to speak, and I will call upon them. The agenda item first is the adoption of the minutes of the April 2021 meeting, as we did not have the May meeting. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the minutes.
I have a motion to approve the minutes. In a second?
I'll second.
There's a second. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll take it to a vote. John Michael Cletus.
Aye.
Suzanne Godsey.
Aye.
Bill Newman.
Aye.
Paul Wazinski.
Aye.
And it's aye from Pratik Bapta. Minutes are approved. Now we'll begin our general introduction to the quasi-judicial decisions. We will now begin the evidentiary hearings for the case listed on the agenda. In hearing cases, the board conducts a quasi-judicial evidentiary hearing. That means it is like a court hearing. State law sets specific procedures and rules concerning how this board must make its decisions. These rules are different from some other types of land use decisions like rezoning cases, which are legislative in nature. This board's decisions are constrained by the standards in the city's ordinance and the facts presented at the hearing. The board hears and considers evidence presented at the hearing and applies the standards set forth in state law and the city's ordinance. The board must base its decision upon competent, material, and substantial evidence presented at the hearing. If you will be speaking as a witness, please focus on the facts and standards, not personal preference or opinions. Participation is limited. The meeting is open to the public. Everyone is welcome to watch. Parties have rights to participate fully. Parties may present evidence, call witnesses. Vote of the board is required to grant the variance. For all other hearings and matters, including the adoption of the minutes, the decisions will be made by a simple majority vote of the board. Witnesses must swear or affirm their testimony. At this time, we will administer the oath for all individuals who intend to provide witness testimony, including if you may be speaking. Okay. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this section shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
I do.
Okay. So our first item on the agenda is from the petitioner, Peter Shaper, and I'm sorry if I mutilated that name. It's requesting a variance to the development standard found in section 7-13-1 C B1 on premises signs, multiple tenant development of the UDO. The petitioner is seeking to classify the existing sign attached as part of the facade as exempt under 7-13-2 C11 to facilitate the installment of a new sign for property located at 14 O. Henry Avenue and identified in Buncombe County Tax Record. Mr. Collins, floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Chris Collins. I'm the division manager over the Planning and Development Division of the city's Development Services Department. I'm here today on behalf of Ricky Hurley, who is actually taking some vacation time. So I will share my screen and take you through the request that's in front of you today. Okay, great. Can everyone see that? Excellent. So as stated, this is a sign variance request for 14 O. Henry Avenue. And this is a request for a variance under section 713-4C-B1 regarding on-premise signs for multiple tenant developments. The petitioner is seeking to classify the existing sign on the building. Of course, we know this building is the Citizen Times building that is attached to part of the facade as being exempt under section 713-2C11. And your staff report does detail what that subsection says, but I'm going to read it to you real quick now and we can come back to it later. But specifically 713-2C11 states that in a type of exempt sign that is exempt from the regulations are signs attached to buildings that are existing as of August 28th, 1990, which identify buildings and which are permanently integrated by etching, embossing, or engraving, or which are otherwise permanently made part of a building facades. These signs specifically include, but are not limited to, commemorative cornerstones. So basically, this is a historical sign exemption that would allow this property to function as if it did not already have any attached sign square footage. Here's the site as we referenced. We know this is the Citizen Times building at 14 O. Henry, right across O. Henry from the Grove Arcade. It's an aerial photo. And here is a street view of the building and the existing sign. And that again is the sign that they are seeking exemption under what we just stated was the historical sign exemption. If that sign, the sign that is being proposed to go on the building, the new sign, is what you see there to the left of the existing Citizen Times sign. It says Citizen Vinyl. By calculations, that sign appears to be about 51.5 square feet, and the maximum allowance in the district is 75 square feet. So if the existing sign were to be classified as exempt per the request, the proposed sign would be within the allowances of the UDO. Another picture of the sign placement as provided by the applicant and the application itself. Just a couple of facts before I end my initial presentation. We do know that the building itself was built in 1939. We don't have an exact record on when the sign was installed, but certainly before 1990, as the regulation states. as staff, I don't think staff felt that they could classify this at their level as meeting that regulation, as it is advertising a currently operating tenant within the building. And the staff report states some other well-known nearby examples of this that do not advertise a currently existing tenant were the S&W cafeteria, although that might be a little messier now. The Crest building or the Sawyer Motor Company building. And if the newspaper were not a current tenant, city staff would apply the exemption as requested. So the reason we're really here is to request that variance due to the fact that that sign does advertise an operating tenant. And I'd be happy to take any questions that the board has at this time.
Board, any questions?
So Chris,
No.
the other signs, the S&W and Sawyer Motor, are those signs all considered exempt, or did they have to go get a variance as well?
Without verifying, I can tell you I don't believe we've issued a variant of this nature for those signs.
Because they're not
I'd have to go
tenants.
back. Right, because they are not advertising existing tenants.
Got it. Thanks.
And Chris, I see on picture number 5 of the placement on building that there is signage for the multiple tenants that are in that building. Is that correct? Right there?
Sorry, I got mixed up on my tabs there for a second. Yeah, there is signage for the multiple tenants on the glass. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and that does conform. They are allowed to have kind of a directory signage, for lack of a better word.
So if the other tenant, if we allow this, would the other tenants be well within their rights to ask for something similar?
The maximum allowance would be the 75 square feet. I don't think no precedent would be set by authorizing this variance in regard to that number. So I believe, yes, that a combined sign that did not exceed that 75 square foot maximum would be okay under this. But I don't think any decision here would affect that 75 square foot maximum.
And is there a potential of possibly redoing the Asheville Citizen Times and make it a multi-tenant sign?
Is there a potential to do it? That I guess they could definitely could be done, but with the somewhat historical nature of that sign, I think that's not the desired outcome.
Okay.
If I can add something, Peter Schaefer from Citizen Vinyl. I'm the Vice President Operation. The two other companies that you're going to see, Session and Coda, these are part of Citizen Vinyl. So that all will be covered with one logo, Vinyl as a holding for Session, this is our restaurant, and Coda, which is our record store. So that is all part of Citizen Vinyl. And to answer your other question, from our perspective, even if the Citizen Times employees or the Citizen Times tenants is smaller as we are, I believe we all in Asheville know this as Citizen Times building, and we don't have a desire to take it away.
Any other questions for staff? No? Okay. I'll close that part of the evidentiary hearing and open it up to the petitioner.
Yeah, the petitioner would be me, Peter Schaefer. I believe it's pretty much all said. We invested around $3 million for the manufacturing part, which is going to make vinyl records, and also the restaurant and the record store. But even in these times, to make aware that we are in this building, especially for people out of town, we need a bigger signage that people are going to see there is something. Unfortunately, a lot of people still see this as a newspaper building, and people are going to pass our restaurant especially And after COVID time, that is our biggest pain, that we need to attract more people to keep the whole system going. And that is the reason why we would like to bring the sign up that show people we are here, even when people are going to Google or Instagram, Facebook, that they're going to see with the first view that we are part attendant of this building. And if you would take the 75 square feet rule, there's about 50 square feet, which goes for the Citizen Times. So there would be really not much left for us.
Yeah, just to add to that, my name is Gar Ragland. I'm the CEO of Citizen Vinyl. We are faced with the challenge of educating the public that this building, which has been private since its completion in 1939, we have the added challenge of, as Peter mentioned, educating people that we exist. There's really nothing on the front of the building that suggests that there is a public business within the building. And now we are the building's largest tenant, and the Citizen Times staff is located in a suite on the second floor. And we definitely want to honor the history of the building and celebrate the fact and refer to the building as the Asheville Citizen Times. We're just in great need of increasing our business's visibility on the front of the building and helping to educate people about our existence there, and to do so in a tasteful way that's complementary to the existing signage.
I'm sorry, anything further from the petitioner side?
Just one other comment to make too. One consideration is, if I understand correctly, the technicality is that the tenants of the Citizen Times are still located in the building. The future of that is uncertain at this time for how much longer the Citizen Times staff will be located here. Sadly, I think that's the fate of local newspapers. But if that's a consideration in terms of the reasons and justification for how to classify the existing signage, wanted just to share that information as well, that there is an indefinite amount of time, uncertain amount of time into the future, how much longer the Citizen Times staff will actually be located in this building.
Okay.
Yeah, hi, and this is Nathan Brown. I'm sorry, I keep getting dropped off the call, and so I wanted to, if I could give just a few words about the signage as well. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I think I missed some of this, but Citizen Vinyl is now the largest tenant in the building. Obviously, we all know Citizen Times was the original tenant of the building. They've been there since then. They had manufacturing, they had production in the facility. Now they're only in a small office space on the second floor. And in general, with a lot of these buildings like this that have sort of large signage on the front of them, the largest tenant will get some sort of like signage rights. So technically, we potentially could remove the Asheville Citizen Times and just put the Citizen Vinyl sign on there, and especially after they vacated the building. But we like the design that Citizen Vinyl came up with on this, and we really wanted to, since the newspaper's been there for so long and everybody knows it as that building, and when you look at it, it is an original sign, and to me, it has some historic significance. I thought what they did was a great way to sort of embrace the future with what they're doing in the building, but also not forget the past. And so the two signs together sort of meld well together, and I don't think it's really overwhelming the marquee or the front of the building or anything like that. So, as owners, we're definitely in front of it. There would never be any sort of larger multi-tenant signage on there. I know that was a question earlier, because this is specifically for the large tenant of the building, and in this case, we're also sort of keeping the historic nature of the existing sign.
All right, thank you. Anything further? Okay, I'll close that part of the hearing and open it up for public comments.
We don't have any callers on the line.
No callers, okay? We'll close that and open it up for board discussion. Board, thoughts?
This is Paul. When I was thinking about this a little bit before the meeting, it occurred to me, as the last caller mentioned, the Citizen Times, to me, represents the past and part of the future of that building, and Citizen Vinyl represents, I'm sorry, let me try that again. They represent the past and part of the present in that building, and Citizen Vinyl represents an increasing part of the present and the future of the building. And I think I am in favor of approving things which speak to the future of Asheville. So I'm in favor of granting this request.
Okay. Any other comments?
I may agree with Paul with his sentiments. My only concern would be a precedent-setting issue if we're going to somehow create a precedent with this with other signs and other buildings. I don't know if I'm able to ask a question, but was there other options considered? Are there other options to consider for other signage or larger signage besides the placement of this?
Are you directing that at staff or the petitioner?
Whoever has an answer to that.
So we did our working by end of last year. What's the best way to show our presence and keep the building as it is? So we had about 2 or 3 people or companies going to show what kind of exterior signage we could have. But everybody comes back and you have this sign over the entrance. And whatever you're going to do, you would add another space. So that is the reason why we finally came up and tried to get our sign into this gallery, this mezzanine, which is or marquee, which is above the entrance, to keep it all nicely together and have a good view.
And I guess to staff, do they have another option? I mean, I understand from their point of view, it's the best, it's what they want to do. Do they have other options?
So the building is, as I said, under the UDO limited to 1 attached sign with a maximum 75 square feet. So right now, unless the Citizen Times sign is exempted, the only way to put a new sign up would be to remove the Citizen Times sign.
So I have a question to that follow-up. Is the existing sign marked as a historical sign, or is that just a perceived historical value?
I don't know that there's any official designation on it. As staff, when we looked at it, we looked at that code section that I read to you and cited, which talks about how the signs work. And again, we felt the one thing that kept it from being in there was that tenant that's there. I think Eric Edgerton, the assistant city attorney, is with us, and he raised his hand. He may have some info.
Yeah, just to clarify that a bit further, Mr. Chair, I think that there's 2 different ways that you can have historically exempt signage. There's a provision in 713.2 that would allow for the city council to specifically designate a sign as historic. And then there's this separate section that Chris has outlined for you that relates to signage in place before, I believe, 1990. And I think there's certainly an argument that could be made that this could qualify within that categorization as historical. But what staff is indicating to the board is that because there's still the one active tenant in the building who that sign relates to, we didn't feel that unilaterally staff could make the decision of labeling it
as historic definitively and avoid bringing this to the board. So though there is certainly an argument that it is historic, that's not something that staff felt they could unilaterally determine on their own, which is why we're here before the board seeking a determination as to whether this sign should be counted towards the allowance for that building.
Yeah, this is Nathan Brown again. Sorry, I missed some of that because I was dropped. But we did go to the Historic Resource Commission, Alexandra Cole there, and she looked at it and she felt that it would be exempt underneath the ordinance there.
As in, she would consider it historic?
Yes, based on its the materials and the fabrication aspect of it.
Okay, great.
Any further comments? No. My thought is, I'm having a hard time trying to figure out on the 4 rules that we have, and that is unnecessary hardship would result from a strict application of this ordinance. That's a toughie for me. The hardship results from the condition that are peculiar to the property, such as location, size, or topography. Hardships did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner. The request for variance is consistent with the spirit purpose. I think several of those are valid. I'm having a hard time understanding where the unnecessary hardship would result from a strict application of the ordinance. The idea that we have an existing signage that could potentially be, changed to a newer signage, or vice versa is something that I'm having a tough time, especially since staff has made the determination that this would not be considered by them to be, it would be counted as a sign for that building. So that to me just, it's not proving that hardship.
Mr. Bhakta, can I make a comment?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That? Every once in a while, I go back to something that Mr. Edgerton has said a few times, and if I'm interpreting what he said correctly, we can look at more than just those 4 questions. We were allowed to look at the totality of the issue. If that's not correct, Mr. Edgerton, please let me know. And that's sort of what I'm looking at here.
Mr. Wilczynski, I'll add that I think that what I've probably told this board more than anything else is that typically economic hardship alone is insufficient to warrant the issuance of a variance. However, the case law tells us that economic hardship, when coupled with something else, some other considerations, which the court doesn't really go into detail on what those might be, would be sufficient. So here the applicant is indicating that there's economic hardship due to the lack of advertising. And so if the board finds that there are other factors worthy of consideration that further bolster their request for a variance, then yes, a variance could properly issue. In this instance, I think the weight of the evidence is relating towards the purpose of the ordinance, which is to preserve and exempt these sorts of purely historical signage. In this instance, it's just a quirk that there is still an applicant who that signage relates to, even though it is really just part of the original 1930 structure of the building. So in this instance, the ordinance tries to exempt those types of signage, but in this case, there is still that tenant in the building, at least for the time being, to which it relates. And so on that basis, staff didn't feel it was proper to unilaterally determine that it is historic, but they also haven't ruled out the propriety of that sort of determination. So if the board were to reach that finding, staff hasn't done anything to contradict that. So we really are leaving it in your hands.
If I could throw a comment, I feel the sign is historic. I mean, that's the way I'd like to issue my opinion on this, but I'm just confused how if I feel that sign is historic, would I be approving this so that they preserve it? I'm just confused how they're asking for a sign, but you guys are asking if we're seeing if this is historic. So what are we actually? Please clarify for me, and I apologize for my confusion. What exactly it is we're approving here? Are we approving their sign or historic, or is it somehow both?
There are two ways that the board could go on this. So one, if you find that what the evidence before you indicates is that this is that the Citizen Times signage is historic within the definition or within the way that term is used in 713.2, then in that case we could at the staff level administratively determine that yes, the board's determination on this is correct, and therefore find that this new signage would be the sole signage counting against their square footage requirements. And in that case, there would not need to be the issuance of a variance. If the board tells us that that's the way it's leaning, staff could then say that in that case, we can issue the permit for installing this new signage under the understanding that the Citizen Times signage should not count, because in that way, the board's indicated what its view is on how that signage should be categorized. The other way of doing this is just simply by saying that, well, for purposes of the variance, we have to consider the purpose of the ordinance, and we find that because the purpose of the ordinance is to exempt historic signage, that argues in favor of the issuance of a variance, and therefore issue a variance on that basis. So you could do either of those two things, would be telling staff, we agree this is a historic sign and exempt it, and then in which case the permit will just issue for the new signage, or you could find that because this is historic signage, it's within the spirit of the ordinance to issue a variance.
I'm leaning towards the former of designating this as historic and letting the staff, if that way we don't have to do a variance and the staff can just, that's where I'm leaning.
My thoughts on that is, I don't think the board would have an opinion on that, but I don't think we're the proper body to designate a sign as historic. I mean, there are historic commissions out there that would be able to do that kind of work and come back to us and say, yes, that is a historic sign, in which case they would not have to theoretically bring that to us for a variance request. Is that possible?
And Mr. Bachtel, I'll add that you're right in the sense that there are different bodies that make determinations as to historic aspects of buildings or properties. However, with respect to the interpretation of the way that historic signage is being used within this specific ordinance provision, it's a bit different than, say, taking something to the Historic Resources Commission. But if what you are indicating to us is that you believe this should be properly classified as a historic sign, that's significant insofar as if city staff were to see this sign separately, issue a notice of violation saying you've gone above your signage limit, then that dispute would come to this same board. So if you've already told us that this is a historic sign and should not be counted towards the limit, we will then know to treat it as such and not take any sort of enforcement action from here on. So to have your opinion on that issue is in fact determinative, even though you won't have to take any formal action.
Okay.
Can I say a few things, please? Does anybody know how this sign, this Asheville Citizen Times, is attached to the building? It looks pretty integral to the windows, and it just seems like, although it's not, architectural precast engraved in some, granite or limestone or something like that, it's still pretty integral to this building. I feel like it's always going to be called the Asheville Citizen Times building, no matter what. I think it is historic. And, for those of you who don't know, Alex Cole is the staff person that leads the Historic Resources Commission. So she knows what she's talking about. If she says it's historic, it's probably a contributing structure downtown. It's just that it's not, from, pre-Depression era. So I'm in favor of however y'all want to grant this variance or make a determination that it's historic.
Okay, any further discussions or questions?
To answer your question pretty quick, so there's this kind of U-shaped metal which is mounted into the sandstone, and each ladder is mounted with several screws and rivets into this metal bars which are mounted in. So nothing is forever, but you could call it that's a pretty tough connection to it.
Yeah, and I'm Nathan Brown. I'll just, in Alex's email here, she just stated that this building is a contributing building in the Downtown National Register District. I think the sign would fall under 11 since it's definitely part of the facade of the building, which was built around 1938-39. So.
Okay, thank you.
And just if it helps, the
Yes, sir.
staff report does, I'm sorry, staff report does highlight that this is official, that does verify that this is a contributing structure in the downtown district. So.
Okay. All right, I'm looking for a motion.
Yeah, this is Paul. I'll make a motion, and I will ask Mr. Edgerton to approve the wording of this motion, because I've never made a motion that sounds like this. I move to determine that the Citizen Times sign on the Citizen Times building is historic.
That sounds good, Mr. Walensky. I'll just maybe add, with your blessing, just the further language of as defined by Section 713-211 of the city's Uniform Development Ordinance.
That's fine with me.
Okay, motion stated and revised. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. Any further discussions? No? Okay, take it to a vote. John Cletus,
Aye.
Suzanne Gotzi,
Aye.
Bill Newman,
Aye.
Paul Wazinski,
Aye.
and Pratik Bhakta is an aye. Motion is approved. And I believe that is all for the agenda items. And if we have nothing further, I'm looking, if there are no objections, we will adjourn the meeting. Any objections? If there are none, this meeting is adjourned.
And we'll see you all in person next month.
Yes, sir. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.